Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Jenica Paz, and I am an assistant professor in the school psychology program within the College of Education here at San Diego State University. I am also a mom to a very active 20-month-old toddler named Sebastian, and I'm really excited to be able to join you all within the Women's Resource Center to kick off the very first How to Talk About series that your organization is putting on for you. This month's topic is going to focus on race. And what a perfect month to be able to have this conversation, to have this topic be highlighted. This month, we're celebrating Black History Month. There's also Lunar New Year. And it's a just really beautiful time and opportunity to be able to have these conversations, which we know can be very difficult. We're also in a day and age where with media exposure, the current socio-political climate, we know that these conversations are really at the forefront of a lot of our minds with media, whether it's social media or television or the wealth of other applications that are out there. There's a lot of information circulating. There's a lot of sort of highlighted events, really gruesome events that are happening across our Black, Indigenous, people of color communities to our Asian American communities. And this is a time where it is time to have these difficult conversations. The time was really yesterday, but each day we can do better and we can do more. And I think that especially in light of how much access our students, our children are being exposed, that we need to make sure that we're really being very proactive with our conversations and being really intentional with how we can start to plant seeds for our youth, for our children to become really upstanders for peace and justice, especially in these really hard times. So I wanted to take a moment and kind of give a little bit of background information with regards to what do we know about how children's really process and understand discrimination and racism, just to sort of give us a springboard. So we know the process and awareness of racial and ethnic identity and attitudes. They actually typically emerge in children beginning around 2 to 3 years old, so pretty young on. At first, they might display more heightened awareness to overt physical differences amongst their peers, but depending on the range and depth of exposure to diverse peers that students have had, as well as to media and culture, children will begin to make some solid connections as to what's familiar versus unfamiliar to them. So you can expect a lot of questions when they are around something that's unfamiliar, very developmentally appropriate, typical, normal. By the time they are ready to enter kindergarten, they're often able to identify their own ethnic and cultural groups, and they're pretty much well on their way to cognitively being able to understand and develop a really rich multicultural lens as well. So what can we do to help parents keep children on the right track? As Ibram Kendi has said, racism and anti-racism is bred, not born. So we know that these ideas and these ideologies and what we're passing down to our children, that's coming from us. So children are not born inherently colorblind. There was a question in the comments where somebody asked, how do we help, let me check the exact question here. So there was a question about how do you teach kids about the difference between colorblindness versus anti-racism? And I will very much say that these things are bred, not born. And so it's up to us as the parents to be able to set the stage and the tone for really cultivating these anti-racist practices. So if we don't talk about race, if we claim to be colorblind, as Ibram Kendi says, we're going to deny what's right in front of you. Thereby, we will not be able to actually call out racism when it happens. No one will see racism if we stay silent. So if we don't name it, it won't stop being so violent. And these are words of Ibram Kendi from one of my favorite books, which some of you were asking about for recommendations for anti-racist books. This one here is The Anti-Racist Baby by Ibram Kendi. I think that mothers, expecting mothers, you have a really beautiful opportunity now to be able to build those bookshelves with really diverse content that are depicting children from different cultural backgrounds and that are celebrating cultural assets. So again, I'm really big into promoting cultural assets, and I really like the Anti-Racist Baby book because it does depict students, children from different colors, different walks of life. A couple others I really love would be Hair Love, and there was also a comment about how the beauty industry affects little girls at a really young age, and how to suggest going about having validating, empowering conversations with young girls, especially if they're dark skinned, to help them see how worthy they are. One other book I really appreciate would be the Hair Love book. I think it does a really nice job of supporting and validating, empowering our beautiful Black young children as well. So I would highly recommend that. And how can we help keep children on the right track? So we know books are a really powerful tool. That's just one. Because of Black History Month right now, it's super easy and efficient. Like there's no excuses to be able to access content through libraries and through your Netflix accounts, whatever online streaming platform you might be using. They're setting it up to make it really easy for you right now, where they're creating these collections to celebrate Black History Month. And so I would really encourage you to go through those pages with your children and make sure that you're regularly incorporating voices and narratives from our Black community, authors, writers, actors, as well as through books and media. So because we're in COVID and pandemic times, I know getting to the library might be a bit more difficult, and checking out books, especially because we know books can get very expensive. But I will say that I know a resource online is that most libraries within San Diego County, even if you don't have a library card yet, you can easily sign up for one online, and you can access books electronically. So several of the books that I had mentioned, as well as if you'd like to go to the libraries and look at their collections to celebrate Black History Month, to celebrate Lunar New Year, you can easily go online and download ebooks for free. And I think they have with them about a 20-day rental. So I feel like that would be a nice, easy way to access some of these great resources, especially to be able to celebrate during the month of February. We hope that you continue to make this a sort of daily practice, of routine that just becomes part of your normal exposure and experience, and part of what your children will grow up with to see as just normal and regular and beautiful. So other things that we can kind of do to help keep children on the right track include that we know that when children are exposed to prejudice or overt racism, children as young as 3 years old, they very well may accept or embrace such ideologies. So again, this is coming from the adults, from the parents, from the caregivers in their lives. So even though they may embrace these ideologies, they might do this even despite not cognitively being able to fully understand the consequences or the feelings behind those really harmful, hateful ideologies and rhetoric. So we want to get to a place where terms such as anti-racism are really normalized, that within their K through 12 education, their curriculum becomes a lot more decolonized, and that words like anti-racism are more central, and that their curriculum is more diverse and reflective of a multiple range of worldviews and perspectives, as opposed to what probably many of you, myself included, were raised on, which was very much so white supremacist and colonist frameworks for education, for reporting on history. So again, I hope we can get to the place, I'm positive that we will, that we can have a space for anti-racism to be cultivated really early on in a child's education. So we also want to be able to get to a place where equity and justice truly for all really are woven into the curriculum for our students. And I would love to see this starting at preschool. Parents may also begin at birth by regularly incorporating books and television shows with diverse characters and music from diverse artists into their daily lives. These intentional practices, paired with actively calling out and correcting racist behavior, will empower children to humbly engage with peers of different backgrounds. And so this is really how you cultivate that upstander behavior. So we do not want to promote bystander behavior in our children, especially when there is racism occurring. We want to teach them how to be able to call that out. So this is about empowering them with these intentional practices to be able to actively call out and correct racist behavior when they see it occurring, whether it be amongst a family member that they're witnessing this, or a friend on the playground, or even a complete stranger. So some ways that educators and parents can have authentic conversations with children about what is happening right now. Your child may come to you looking for advice about how can you talk to, how can they better understand the events that are going on. And so I'm gonna urge each of you to be able to really think deeply about the level of detail that you provide. It should be matched with your child's developmental and cognitive age. So no matter the age though, I think a really nice starting place would be asking the child what it is that they already know or think they know about the situation. This can provide an excellent opportunity to see what level of understanding they have about the issues. And then just as with other crisis events, we want to make sure that we're intentional, factual, and direct with what we share. So this also means avoiding euphemisms or sugarcoating situations. For especially vulnerable youth, it's okay to leave out gruesome details, but the core of the issue should still be relayed for the student or for your child. And then you'll want to check back for understanding with them and ask them to say back to you in their own words what they learned or what they took away from your conversation. Ask them if there's anything that they still feel confused about. A really big one is if they get back to you and ask you a question about something that you feel like you might not have the best answer to, that's okay. The best thing you can do is be transparent with them and let them know you're not sure, but that you can learn the information together. And feeling uncomfortable, reminder, feeling uncomfortable talking about race is a privilege. It means you have not had to endure and live through it yourself. So it's okay that these conversations can get uncomfortable. This is reminding me back on another question that was asked by some of the parents in this group. And it was, how do you teach kids to be mindful about race without perpetuating a white savior complex? And I'm gonna say this as gently as I can, but the white children aren't born with a white savior complex. So that gets passed down from the parents. That gets maybe passed down from caregivers, adults in their lives, even if they may unwillingly or unknowingly pass this down. So I think that to help address and tackle that issue, I think it's really important that the parents and caregivers or educators that are supporting students really critically reflect about what are some values, worldviews that have been passed down to you in your own family. Which of those do you find that will be helpful for perpetuating and promoting more of an anti-racist type of child or ideology, and which might be promoting those racist thoughts, ideas, and notions? And so think really critically about what are those ideologies that were passed down to you, what do you want to continue on, and what would you like to stop? And so thinking about that white savior complex, I think, is a big deal here, because that's coming down to you, that's coming down to the parents in terms of not wanting to have that be perpetuated amongst students. So a really beautiful way to do this is that by promoting this upstander behavior, by continuously exposing to your students and getting them involved with youth in different extracurricular activities with children that are of diverse backgrounds, having them enjoy food from all over the world. These, when we start to cultivate these at a very young age, that diversity is going to become their norm, and being able to upstand when they see racist events happening, that's going to be a part of their fabric of living, their way of being. And so that white savior complex really comes down to it being the parents' issue to have to deal with, not so much the child. I hope that makes some sense there. One moment as I go back and check if there were other questions. I feel like we've addressed a good majority of what you all asked. I want to also humbly offer and say that this is certainly not a one-time conversation. I am not going to pretend to be an expert in all areas of this. In fact, I think each of you are experts in your own right in terms of your own cultures, your own backgrounds. And so I'm going to really urge you to just continue this conversation. I wish that we could have the space to be able to openly discuss, because I think that it's these conversations we have with others, and having them with others with other people from different backgrounds and from different cultures that are going to really help provide that and broaden your perspective in terms of how to be able to really feel more comfortable talking about race and cultures with your students. And I think that, you know, this is maybe just a starting point. There's certainly a lot of learning that we all can do. And so in that spirit, I hope to end today by sharing with you that if you can, you know, focus on one thing in terms of area of growth for yourself, and what maybe would be a helpful gem to pass on to your student would be really that sense of cultural humility. So it's taking yourself kind of out of the equation as being an expert in anything related to culture, and you're instead giving space for others' voices and narratives to be able to share what living has been like from their perspective, what has been traumatizing for them, what are those cultural celebrations in their family that are beautiful and that are enriching and that are that we have so much to learn about. And I think when we do that and we take ourselves out of the equation, cultivating this sense of cultural humility whereby you know, we can then attempt to promote more equity, because we're not promoting a hierarchy in which there's one race better than another, but yet we're just creating a space where we are learning together and from one another, celebrating those issues, celebrating those cultural assets, and at the same time, being able to really engage in some introspection and call ourselves out, hold ourselves accountable when we may say something that is racist. And it's okay to acknowledge that you are a racist too, because everybody inherently has tendencies to come off as racist, even if they are not intentionally meaning harm by it. But being cultural, having a sense of cultural humility is also allowing other people to correct you on your behavior. And it's only when we have people pointing these things out that we can truly change and reflect and make sure that we're taking better active anti-racist stance in the future. I thank you all for having this conversation with me today. Again, there's so much more that can be said on this topic. Because we're in February, I really urge you, there's some incredible cinema that's just been released. Take time to watch those movies that are highlighting the stories of oppression, stories of hurt and pain that maybe you hadn't heard about. What we're seeing in depicted in films right now, the number of books that have been released that are available for adults to learn about Black history, these are just a very small percentage of the accounts of what the lived experiences have been that have been silenced for so long by our white supremacist policies and procedures that have silenced the voices. And I think now is the time. It's been way long overdue, but right now we're talking about Black History Month and race. And so I'm going to urge you to this weekend, over the course of the next several months, take time to really listen to these narratives and these stories, and really help try to bring to light and center our Black community in terms of their history, their stories of oppression, and get yourself to be in a place where you are no longer contributing to these systems of oppression, but instead cultivating active anti-racist babies for our next generation. So thank you so much for listening and for talking with me today. I look forward to upcoming chats with you as well. I wish we had a cup of coffee and we could just talk this over as a group. But I look forward to talking with more of you in the future and hearing more questions down the line. So thank you so much for your time and have a beautiful day.